Hello and welcome to this special episode of the Material Revolution. Why is it special that you ask? Well, we're actually hosting a panel discussion. It's called Material Revolutionaries, and the focus of our conversation is creative reuse and tools of transformation. Today's conversation was created in celebration of the inaugural Sustainable Fashion Week UK. I thought this was a perfect opportunity for me to bring voice to a topic that is not only near and dear to my heart, research and practice, but I really wanted to position it and have a conversation with four amazing designers that are experts in the field. And so I'm fortunate today because I am speaking with Jose Hendo, a Ugandan-born UK-based designer, Melissa Ferreira Schwager, a Canadian-born and Germany-based designer, Sylvia Calvo from Barcelona, Spain, and Jane Ziemons, a Scottish-born and Australian-based, specifically Western Australian-based artist and designer. Each of these designers are based in different parts of the globe and specialize in creative reuse. Their inspiring stories and practices have led them to become transformational practitioners, educators, and leaders who are inspiring community. So I just want to say hello and welcome to each and every one of you today. So before we transition into our conversation for today, I want to emphasize the importance of creating a global conversation on the subject of creative reuse because, in my opinion, it is a powerful transformational tool that is accessible to all, and it is something that I believe requires more acknowledgement. Regardless if you are self-taught, a DIYer, or are an educated and skilled designer or craftsperson, creative reuse is a field of design research that does require expertise, leaders, and their wisdom to share their diverse knowledge and experience in order to elevate the field of design to represent the kind of action and growth we want to see in the world and in our industry. And this is one that is based on resourcefulness, mindfulness, community building, and ultimately unlimited creativity. And although I may be preaching to the converted, given that many of you listening to this are likely in your own personal creative reuse journey, but what I want to address and what I find so special and magical about creative reuse is that regardless of your practice, skill level, application, and exploration, it contributes towards a language, a visual culture that we all can understand and relate to. Its message is one of empowerment because it activates creativity in ways that allows for self-discovery and for new approaches and solutions and alternative methods to emerge. Regardless of what material, process, or transformational tool is being used, creative reuse is the ultimate secret ingredient to any creative design solution. It is a shapeshifter that represents diversity, and it is from this space that I thought this was a great opportunity to bring together these women to share their expertise, their tools of transformation, and how they are going about to inspire community. What is integral to your practice of creative reuse? What key ingredients can you share with our audience?
I think it is a mind thing. It is where I come from in all of this personally. And I bring it into my work and I bring into I can't separate it from my work. So it's a lifestyle choice, choosing to do what I do and thinking the way I do as well. The key thing is I think reduce. It underpins everything and dictates on what happens in how I work and how I think, really. And when I realized that, that's when I started my Earthquake campaign. One of the reasons I started my Earthquake campaign is because, it's a word that when you're trying to recycle, it is all about reducing. When you're reusing, it's about reducing. When you're repurposing, it's about reducing. It absolutely impacts on everything else that I do. So it's an integral part of what I do. And so with that, I have chosen then to work with this ancient cloth that for me has helped me not as an artist to express myself in so many ways. With that thought, then the material really matters as well, what you use to work with. And I choose to work with bark, Ugandan bark cloth. And so, yeah.
Thank you for that. Melissa, what are your thoughts? Like, what are some of your key ingredients?
It's just so great to hear all these voices saying the things that I hear inside my head that aren't just in my head anymore, you know. I think for me, it's always been about, similar to what Jose has said, you know, reducing, right? Especially since moving to Germany and then going into kind of like lockdown situation, it's like, you know, really just using what's available. And I haven't had to buy a single piece of fabric in almost 2 years. So luckily I came with like quite a supply. Like I packed my entire studio and years of fabric collection with me. But even so, like it's, you know, all the reclaimed materials I have, I really treat like a very rare commodity, you know, and I try to utilize every single last scrap and the littlest bits I've been putting into a box and trying to come up with, you know, ideas of stuffing. Like I've made some stuffed animals and stuff for my daughter and my nieces and stuff, and just always trying to look at materials as precious and what, you know, what more can be done and how much farther can you stretch it out. It just becomes a way of life. Like I can't bear to waste anything, you know. So and if I don't have a use for it, I try to find others that, you know, that do, and have donated materials to schools and things like that. So yeah, I think it's training your mind to have it become second nature, to not waste.
Fantastic. Thank you, Melissa. Sylvia, what are your thoughts? What are some of your key ingredients?
Well, I think the key thing is to envision, to have that vision, to see trash as something beautiful, you know, to see a residual material, to see what the new life is going to be for that. Being able to go beyond that trash, I think is very key. As ingredients or materials that I use mostly are the jute from the coffee bags and the organic cotton, and both have a story behind. You know, I think Jose mentioned before, no, that the story that our clothes, our materials have behind. And I always think about from the very beginning, no, that coffee bag was filled with coffee of some very far away lands, farmers. That the bag was all the work from the whole year, what that represented their education, you know, their way of living there, you know, their economics is all in that bag. And thinking, you know, how they took care of that coffee and all the process up to putting it in there, and then it travel all the way far away here, and then we get it, and then they are thrown away, and then that's where we go and see the beauty that can be of transformation of that. No, so it has a whole story behind. And in one of my videos I say, you know, once they travel to us, now we travel with them, you know, and that is how we take them, assume them, and travel with that material. The other one that I use a lot is organic cotton from Organic Cotton Colors, is a company here in Barcelona as well. But that cotton also has a story behind, and it matches perfectly with my youth. Is a farming project that he has in Brazil, also with a very nice social impact behind it. I invite you to, you know, when we have a chance to take a look into Organic Cotton Colors and see the project of that, the farming of that cotton. So those are key ingredients. So, and the most important one is the passion that we put in our work, that we believe that we can do it, that we believe that we are capable to rebirth those materials, to give a new birth, a new life. And I think that is key. If we don't believe it, it's not going to happen. And I think we all here do.
Thank you for that, Sylvia. And next up is Jane. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the things that are integral to me, I would say that the meditative quality of stitch for me is really integral, because in the act of stitch, for me, that's where everything starts to come together. Because, you know, even just taking that time to actually thread a needle place the needle in your fingers, come through the fabric. There's such value that you are imbuing in that cloth by just that simple act. So that's really integral for me. And then also I'm really super curious about people. And so I'm really like interested in why we do what we do. Like, why does somebody keep, this holy jumper that's, completely falling apart, but yet someone else is more than happy to just literally throw something into the bin because it doesn't have a button on it, or buttons falling off, or like these sorts of things. Like, I'm really curious about that, and I think that because of that curiosity, that feeds into my desire and my passion and my need to create something on the basis of wanting it to be kept and loved and cared for. And what is it about that particular item that will make that happen? Like, what is it that I can do as a designer and as an artist that can make that cloth, just that somebody wants to hold on to it for longer? Like, what is it that I can do? And so whether that's in education, where I'm working with people to actually make their own garments, or working with people to repair their own garments, or talking with people just in a social space, of why they do what they do. And that's really integral to how I create, and why reuse becomes so important to me, so significant to me.
Wonderful, Jane. And while I have you, I'm going to actually move on to the next question. So, what do you consider to be your creative reuse specialty? What part of creative reuse do you identify with most?
Okay, so that would be, for me, I would love to be that person, right? I would love to be the kind of person who could say, I specialize in this. I'm just not that person. I don't specialize in anything, because for me, it's about, once I know what story needs to be told, I then am in a space of finding out how to tell that story. And so it could be like, for example, during COVID, where we've been very, very fortunate in WA to not have experienced the kind of lockdowns that everybody has around the rest of the world. But at the time when we were, told to go home, it was really emotional for me, because if I'm told to go home, then I'm going to Scotland. Australia is my adopted home. So for me, the act of going home, it was so huge. It was so filled with this emotion. And so in order to deal with those feelings, I then turned to weaving daily and using the plant matter in my garden to create new cloth and to do eco dyeing and these sorts of things. And so, at that point, that would seem like a specialism at that point, because I was so in that space and learning about that. But then I might not do that for like another 10 months or a year or whatever. It's just because at that time, that was what needed to be done to tell that story of what it is to feel a disconnect with where you are and where home is, and how do we then reenact that feeling of being at home? Well, it's about making a connection to land and place and being still and being there. And so so at that point I was a specialist in weaving and eco dyeing, and now I'm a specialist in creating a very very interesting piece for my installation. I learn what I need to learn to tell the story that needs to be told.
Thank you for that, Jane. And I think this is a perfect segue into Melissa's practice. So, Melissa, could you respond to that question?
Oh my gosh, I was just nodding all the way through what Jane just said. I was like, yeah, you're singing my song, Jane. I totally feel what Jane said. I also went into this headspace with being in a foreign land and not being able to go home, and wanting to recreate a feeling of something familiar. So I went on this journey with eco printing, and it's something that I've always been curious about and delved right into it. Basically since the start of this year, and it's just floored me. I don't think I've been more in love with a new process within my creative practice in terms of what I consider what I specialize in. I would definitely say redesigning, reworking, upcycling, taking something in its original form and seeing a new vision for it, a new life, creating a higher value, if you will, and then, you know, implementing the eco-printing onto these reclaimed fabrics, and then using the reclaimed fabrics the way I always have, but now with this beautiful new surface design process is just a whole other level. Like, it's completely re-inspired my practice with further inspiration. And just a side note on that, with what Jane was talking about, something I've really felt like I've tapped into within this whole process is the whole genetic memory idea, where, you know, my grandmother was also someone who dyed botanically. She used to repair the clothing of the people in her village where she was from in Madeira. She was from a small island off the coast of Portugal. And my mother tells me often a lot of stories. So it's just really interesting to feel this connection to this history that I have, you know, feel home within creating, you know, something to be cherished and loved for, you know, for hopefully for many generations to come in the next person's hands who adopts my pieces.
No, that was fantastic, Melissa. Thank you for that. Sylvia, what are your thoughts to that question?
Okay, I think I'm a master of nothing, and when you do a lot of things to master anyone. But one of the things that I think I do well is to give that new air, that new style to that piece of trash. I think that is something that not everyone can apply, and I think that transforming and giving that elegance that to that coffee bag that we wouldn't give it for it at the beginning. I think it's one of the things that we do, I think, quite well, or I I try to think that we do, or, you know, still a lot of things to improve and learn every day a little bit more to apply other techniques. But is that savoir-faire, to put all that thing nicely so it goes up from the trash and it goes up. So I think that's one of the things that characterizes my pieces.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Sylvia. And Jose, how would you respond to that question?
Do you want to redirect, please?
You want me to say the question again? Yes. So what do you consider to be your creative reuse specialty? And what part of creative reuse do you identify with the most?
I tell you why I had to ask, because I just went on a tangent with everyone's statement and I got caught up in it because they're so beautiful. So thank you, ladies. You totally took my mind because I think, Catherine, again, you did so well in connecting us because we are so connected in so many ways. And so I got swallowed up in your stories. But, and each one of them touched on what I have to say. But yeah, for me, it's all about bark cloth. And I use that to tell. So I flip it down from what Jane was saying. So for you, it's the material that dictates, or it's story that you're trying to do, or whatever for me, I have to include in everything I'm trying to do, this cloth, this ancient cloth, the oldest cloth made by man. I feel compelled in everything I do to include it. And it has inspired me immensely in so many ways that I if I was just working with organic cotton or organic bamboo, I would not be doing what I do now. So I am so grateful for this gift. I can share with you something that I think it's Melissa was saying, the genetic memory. I found out after so many years of working with bark that my grandfather actually made it. So then I realized why I loved it. So there's that connection there in terms of how did I fall in love with this? I could have chosen anything to work with. I didn't have access to it here until I went to visit Uganda, and then I found it. So, and another thing, the stitching that Jane was talking about, this cloth splits while they're making it, and each man has got their own signature and how they stitch it back together. So when I get this cloth, every single cloth inspires me differently. So I have 10 pieces and each one of them tells me something different. So for me, it's just, endless. Yeah.
No, you definitely all are very truly inspiring. So it's nice to hear that you're inspiring each other even in this short time period. So moving along, is there a moment in your personal journey that you can share that influenced your approach to creative reuse?
I started as a child, but even then I didn't have, because as a very earthy child, I wanted more art than making clothes. So it's, making things for my dolls, clothes for my dolls. That moment I realized I wanted to work with my hands. I would use anything and everything I could access. I made hair for them. I did all kinds of things, just using what was there. My mother made clothes, so there was always some leftover fabric to kind of take away and use. So that moment, I think, and unconsciously, that happened. And then I went off thinking I'm going to be an artist and all I'll be doing is painting and drawing and making sculptures. And then I was doing my research, full speed ahead. I'm doing my research. I was at London College of Fashion and I was looking at what happens after we use the garments. That was a pivotal moment in my career. And I was so grateful that I chose to go back to university and do some more study rather than push another angle in my career, because I felt something wasn't right within the industry. And I went into stores and I saw what was going on in there. And I thought, how do I change this? And by the way, that time I was designing bridal wear. So everything had to be pretty and beautiful and placed in the perfect place. And I think my mind was tired of that. I needed something fresh. So going back to university changed me completely, because it was thinking beyond a fashion designer. So break the rules, think outside, think outside the box. Those 2 points in my life, for me, I feel have made a huge impact in what I am now. So as a child, knowing that my hands were it, I wasn't going to sit at an office desk and work all day, 9 to 5. No way. So, and then that point in going back to making the choice to go back to university and change my direction, because I needed something more. And that's when this sustainable by design happened. That's when that phrase, I coined that phrase because I knew with my research that I did, nothing was ever going to be the same. I had to make a change. Change had to happen, and I was going to be part of it.
Thank you, Josie. Sylvia.
Well, one of the important moments in my journey, I think it was at the very beginning. The spark that made me go this way, and that was in a conference that I attended, trade fair called Biocultura, that they do here in Barcelona, and it was a conference titled Eco Fashion. I didn't know anything about eco fashion at that moment, and I said, that sounds interesting. I was really shocked at that moment to learn all the impacts that the fashion industry and the textile industry has on our environment and our society, and also impact on our economy. And I was really, really shocked. And I thought, well, if I ever do something in this area, is going to be in this direction, sustainable fashion. In that conference, there was an example that they show pieces, very beautiful pieces of handbags made of a car security belts. And I thought, wow, how cool. Something that was totally from another industry, it was used for the fashion industry, to make these beautiful handbags. And I learned there that the most sustainable material is that one that already exists. So learning now, what I know is the industrial symbiosis and the importance of the materials already existing around us. I left that place thinking is I need to find my trash. I need to find what is my waste material that I will transform. And with that goal in my mind, then I found the coffee bag. I went to the harbor in Barcelona, where is one of the places where they receive coffee, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands of bags there that are looking for a new life, an alternative that are going to the trash. And that's how I started. So that was a turning point for me, and a turning point also in the direction of my professional life, because it started as a personal challenge, and then I started developing and going much farther and created my project. But that was a very key moment for me, and that taught me the value of things. That trash is, I think one of you said before, that because a garment is missing a button, then it's thrown away. Well, that has a value, and a button is easy to put back in there. But it seems that we have forgotten. We are, not related to things and the value that they represent. And I think we all know that is a very key moment in time to really reshape our thought, and give value to what it has.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you for that, Sylvia. Jane, what moment do you have to share on your personal journey?
Yeah, I'm really old, so there's loads of them. So I think, well, for me, like I've always loved dressing up, and I love clothes and just the whole nature of how we present ourselves to the world, and how dramatically different it can be just through the nature of what we wear. And I did the whole goth thing, and I did the whole punk thing, and did the whole hippie thing, and I've done that all. And so in the 90s, I did my first degree was in business, and even back then I was really interested in just the way that we treat people. And so my thesis was all about this, in fashion retail, how did we retain staff? And this was just, your retail staff, your casual staff, what is it that we can do to help people to feel like they really belong and feel valued. And so that was way back in the 90s. And so then I graduated, and it was like, oh, so what goes on in my head isn't what goes on in the real world. It was horrifying for me. I was like, it was in the height of fast fashion, and it was so not how I felt things should be. And I was like, what do I do? So I retrained and I became a teacher, which, being a teacher, it comes with its purpose. As soon as you are a teacher, you have a purpose.
Yeah.
So I taught for years, and then we came to Australia, and it was the first time where I wasn't going to be going out to work. I was at home with the children, and I had the opportunity to do my degree in art. And as Catherine will remember, the fashion department in Edith Cowan University is by far the most exceptional space in which to learn. And I had no intention of going into fashion. But I was there because I wanted to be an artist. And then I went to the fashion department and met Justine McKnight, and just utterly fell in love with the entire space, the way in which fashion was taught, just being with cloth every day. And this, believe me, this freaked me out, because this was not my intention. I was going to be a very important, very professional, full of my own self-importance artist. And there I was in fashion. What? So yeah, completely. But then what happened, which was really significant at that time, there was a little poster up, as all posters become really significant in our lives. This little poster was looking for people to be involved in this fair trade fashion show. And it was the recognition of the year after the Rana Plaza disaster. And a woman who I was speaking to today, Gail Beach, she was running this fashion festival. And I thought, now there is the space that I can bring my values, my sense of universal wealth, and why this is so important, how all of these advocating for the underdog, this way of believing that I have a reason for doing what I'm doing, it became evident to me that this was the space that I needed to work in. And so, yeah, long before the word sustainable fashion and these things became, you know, something that people talked about, that was just part of who I am. But now there is a path there, and there's, you know, there's work to be done. Yeah. And it's not like one of us is going, oh, all of us here are saying, come on, we can do this. We can do the right thing now. And so, yeah, I think that's these sorts of shifts that interesting, you don't realize at the time. Yeah. But then suddenly when you're asked questions like this, you go, yeah, you know, that all falls together in that place. So yeah, lots to be grateful for along the way. Lots of wonderful people along the way that have led the way. So thank you for that question, Catherine. It's really beautiful to think about these moments, isn't it? You know.
Absolutely, and you're so welcome. Melissa.
Wow, so amazing. Such a wealth of experience in this group. It's just so nice to listen to all of you. I'm so glad I get to go last because I get to hear all these fabulous stories. I guess for me, there's sort of a factor that has been the major topic for all of my answers, and it's really, for me, upbringing. I grew up with such a large family. My mother had 8 brothers and sisters, and so my grandmother used to constantly tell us, you know, don't waste anything. And, even the little bit of milk you have in your cereal bowl, she would say in Portuguese to us to drink our milk, you know, drink every last little bit. So I found out that my grandmother was also an avid dumpster diver. So she used to come home with the craziest stuff, you know, gold jewelry and stuff. Her place was like a museum. So for me, I think not having a lot, to be honest, like, you know, just sort of using what was readily available. Like people would donate their oil paints to me when I was a little kid, and I would just sit there and, you know, paint landscapes with Bob Ross and, just try to find a use for everything that was given to me. And so to be honest, when I was quite young, I used to not want to tell other kids, you know, that like everything I owned was from the Sally Ann or the secondhand shop. I tried to like create my own style even from a very young age, and sometimes, you know, get like weird looks from other kids and stuff. But eventually it ended up turning me into the cool kid at some point. But yeah, I think the idea of reusing and just using what's readily available has just always been a part of my upbringing. My mother worked in factories when I was a child in Montreal. So in the 80s, it was okay to take your little ones with you to work. And so I would sit with her, you know, by her feet while she was at industrial sewing machines doing piecework, you know, for 8 to 10 hours a day, just playing with the scraps that would fall from her machine, and little vintage buttons that I would organize into like 2 holes and 4 holes, and being tactile and using your mind and your hands to create something from nothing, I think has always just been a part of my upbringing. And I'm really grateful. You know, when I was younger, I wished I had fancier things, but you know, now I realize that I have a wealth of experience through all of these experiences to show others, you know, to think outside of the box and just not look at something as being deemed for the landfill, but you know, what can you do with this? And there's so much that can be, not to just see it as like a garment with a lost button, but as material, you know, as thing that is a tool for something else. So.
And speaking of tools, and I'm going to keep you here for a second. The next question really actually focuses on tools of transformation. And I believe that tools of transformation are not just the physical tools that we use in the studio. I do know that you did give me some images, Melissa, that I'm going to share. I think everyone's going to have a different response to this. So I'm just going to pull them up, and you can talk about what your tools of transformation are in your practice in your studio. So, and through that, perhaps you could walk us through what you deem your toolkit is. How do you not only utilize these tools, but also what do you use to activate and empower creative reuse in your practice?
So actually, most of these pieces you see here are from the eco printing process that I've fallen head over heels with this year. I've been combining it also with silk screening, which I learned from, you might remember Eureka from Blim in Vancouver, Catherine.
Yes, I do.
She taught me how to silk screen, and that silk screen squeegee you see there is actually from that time still, and I love how paint splattered it is. Actually, to be honest with you, I'm almost just as much in love with the tools themselves as I am with the outcome. Just every single little leaf imprint from the wood pieces you see there, and the paint splatters, and it's just, I don't know, that organicness, that one of a kind splatter, is to me just as beautiful as like I call them happy accidents. Much of my process, I think, when I approach it isn't with a specific outcome in mind. And oftentimes I'm just sort of like experimenting all the way through piece after piece, because I'm just so excited to see what is going to happen when I unbundle this, this fabric, or when it comes to dyeing, and nothing is really calculated. So anyhow, the squeegee, the apron I've had underneath it, I've had for, I don't even know now. It's been at least 20 years. I've used it. I literally use it for everything. The other day I couldn't find it and I felt like I was lost forever. It's become kind of almost like a beloved teddy bear for me. I just feel like I can't do anything if I don't have my paint splattered apron. And then there's 2 tiles next to the apron, which are just tiles that this rectangle and square there, they have these sort of leaf patterns left behind from the eco printing process that I do. And that's just stuff I found lying around. We're actually renovating our place right now. So most of these objects in here are just pieces I found lying around, including that board, that big piece of board, which I just had a eureka moment at one point this year. And I thought, instead of wrapping my garments around sticks or just twisting them and tying them off, I've started wrapping them around the wood piece and immersing that in dye vats with the leaves rolled up in the fabric. So that's what those sticks are you see, and the board there. And then the whisk, of course, for, swooshing things around in the dye vat, specifically vinegar, which I use the acid dyes from Maiwa, actually, from Vancouver. I still have those. Catherine, I know more than familiar with that.
Very much so.
The tongs for removing the hot items out of the dye vat, which I actually don't have in this photo, but I use one of those metal vats with a lid that you would see a catering company would use.
Yes.
So I use that to put the boards inside so that I can dye bigger pieces. And I'm actually looking for an even larger vessel because I want to start dyeing like really, really large pieces next year.
Mm-hmm.
And the fork with this little rubber, there's like a little rubber piece on the fork, which is actually a cut off thumb from a latex glove, which I rubber band onto the fork, which I use in a sort of like if you were going to eat spaghetti, like, and twist your fork around some spaghetti, like I do that, but with my wool sweaters, so that I can get a turning effect. And then I don't have elastics here, but I do tie them off with elastics and string and stuff to when I'm tie dyeing my sweaters and my wool pieces. I find it just works really, really well. Mm-hmm. Doing it that way. And then the bulldog clips for clamping things onto the tile that's there, or even to close shut the lid on my metal vat sometimes if the pieces are keeping it to close. Mm-hmm. And then the garden shears, which I use in my backyard to test out we've got like 100 different varieties of different plants and trees in our backyard that I'm still discovering. I'm testing them out to see which eco print and which don't and what have you, which I feel will be a very, very long, exciting process of recording. My notebook for recording all of my experiments in eco printing processes is not in this, but should be, because that's been a very important thing to have, a journal.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. It's where
and
all the alchemy.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And there have been times where I'm like, I'll remember that. And then I'm like, oh my God, how did I do that? And then I'll have to experiment several more times just to get the same result again. So, yes, very important to write down successful result in a journal. Then, yes, my cloth in the corner and my rubber gloves, which I think are pretty self explanatory there.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are indeed. Well, thank you
Yes.
for that, Melissa. We gotta move
Pleasure.
along here, and I'm gonna go to you next, Jose. I know that you were going to send me an image of bark cloth, but I don't have that, so I'm gonna pull up an image of your work.
Okay, so tools of transformation. So for me, it's a psychological thing. It's my mindset. Like I said before, starting from that whole point of thinking, reduce, and thinking about being mindful about all the choices that we make, how they impact, the world around us. So it's a natural process for me then to have this be a huge part of my tools of transformation and inspire me to no end to always kind of push the boundaries of what is possible. And along this journey that I have been on, I'll step back a little bit here. I think it Melissa who said this, no, I think it's somebody else, about the fact that it's about, for me, a very active imagination, one that never stops, but for the right reasons, if that makes any sense.
Sure does. I think I suffer from that same affliction.
Yes. So I'm inspired by everything and anything to think, to actually use that reduced thing that is in me to make it come to life. That's what it does. It's just nothing is beyond me. If you wanted me to bring my tools, they'd fill up this whole space. So what then I do then is go back to what is the most common thing that spreads across everything that I do. It is bark cloth. And for me, the fact that it is part of my heritage directly has given me the freedom to kind of use it and not apologize. I use it for everything. I make headpieces, I make garments for men and for women, children. I use it as a symbol to do the graphics on clothing, like what I'm wearing today. You can't see me.
Yes, we can. Yeah, I can see that
Yeah.
R. That's
So
part of
the
your
word-
R3 campaign. Yeah.
Yes, so this is the reduce word today. And I've been wearing this garment all week because, well, when I have to be photographed, because it reduces the word that kind of like inspires, but the graphics are written in bark. So everything is using all the leftover pieces. It's absolutely changed my everything. I think somebody else said something about keeping every scrap, every little piece that you cut away, that leftover. And my studio is full of them, because the value that these men add to this cloth while they're making it, I can then take it and then use it without a good intention. So intentionality really, really matters. So all these things for me, psychologically, my imagination, my inspiration, drawing inspiration from everything. And also the fact that, you have to have that passion. You have to really want to really get in and do what you're trying to do, or say what you have to say. And I say that through my work. And I use this cloth to tell the story about change, because for me, it's the perfect ambassador for sustainability. I use it as a tool, as whatever you want to call it, but it is in everything I do, in all my collections, it will appear. And in this garment here, just talking about this, it is what has transformed this whole piece. This is an upcycled man's clothing. So it is a blazer, and it is a coat as well. So this long coat and then the blazer, all put together, again, as a woman's clothing. It's just flipped the whole thing around. And wherever this garment has been on display, the men really love it, because I'm sure they can see themselves there. But it is this whole thing about the history being as important as the future. So it's called antoneric PPF. And the past, present, and future is right there, because the past is just as present, just as important as now, and also the future is important. So when I design it the way I think, all these things come into play. So this garment tells a story. It's got Scotland in there, Jane. It's got Africa in there. It's got Uganda in there, because obviously I have used bark cloth to transform this. But then it's also got this random peg that I use there to put it together. And you might say that's a chopstick, you might say what it is. But for me, it's combining all these things that I don't have to use conventional forms of fastening. That's one thing I don't have to, stick to the rules about. And so my tools of transformation are very fluid. I am psychological, but then the bark cloth is always there. And then the endless supply of these garments, to upcycle, recycle, reuse, and repurpose. But also through all of that, it is the passion behind it. For me, the moment I connected with this cloth, the cloth that is more than 700 years old, 700-year-old tradition that has been recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage. And this I got to know after I started working with it. I felt I couldn't just use it for one season and that's the end of it. So I've gone back to the communities where they have kept this tradition going. And I am working with them. We are planting trees to make sure that we don't lose this tradition, but also because of the environment. We all know about climate change and the fact that if the climate is good in Africa, if the ecosystem is really good there, then the rest of the world is going to be okay. We're all connected, whether we like it or not. If South America has something going on there, we feed it here as well. So knowing that there's that kind of connection, interconnectedness, pushes me to think constantly, what else can I do? And I go back to my tool, bark cloth, and I use it to tell a story about a change that needs to happen again and again and again.
Thank you so much for that, Jose. I'm going to actually jump over to Sylvia. So Sylvia, I'm going to...
How interesting. I really relate a lot to what Jose just said. A lot of it. Well, the key ingredient are my beloved coffee bags. For example, in this garment, we see two types of coffee bag. There's the jute, the ones that are made of jute, which is the brownish color, and then the cotton coffee bags. They are not as used as much as the jute, but they are used. And they never made it to my studio unless they are all clean and ready to be used and be transformed. And then here, then I have them hanging in there, and that is a key ingredient. The passion, the imagination is essential. I close my eyes so I can see. I imagine what they're gonna be, how they're gonna be transformed. And then I use the traditional techniques like embroidery. We also do painting, the ceramic as well. I also use some woodwork with making buttons. So I try to bring value to the piece also with the collaboration or of other artists or the combination of different techniques to really give it a value and to give it a wider story to the piece. In this particular one is I'm doing this special project of the cotton ones to be printed as I wanted at the very beginning, before the coffee bag is filled in. So that way I know that we can give them a new life at the end of the first use of the intended use, which is transportation of cargo. But if I know that and anticipate myself and start doing some eco design, then I design at the very beginning of the product. Then I do the printing there. Then they do the first use, which is transportation. And then when I pick them up, they already have a print. And this one, on one side, on the left side, you can see that there's the the
Mhm.
regular letters, which is the information that the coffee must have as the origin, batch number, ISO number, and all that needs to be on every single bag
Mhm.
that is exported. And then on the other side, there's a printing, very likely see there, but that print is made at origin and is used with a screen printing instead of roller printing, because that way they could give more work to the people at that point. And it was a little bit more artistic, but it was the social impact that it could have there. And the tin that it was used is, the dye that it was used is the coffee ground.
Yeah, I was going to say
Uh-huh.
you used it as like a natural dye. That was like the base
Yes,
of the.
yeah,
Mhm.
So if you can see at the bottom of the garment, there's kind of a brownish kind of thing
Yes.
there. That
Mhm.
is made with the coffee ground, and then the green in there is made with the coffee shuffles of the
Oh,
coffee
interesting. Yes.
and indigo, rest of indigo. So all these are natural dyeing on this cotton coffee bag. So we try to plan to do this. We say always in eco design that we have to think about the whole life of the item that we're going to make, at the beginning, at the moment that we sit down and we are on the drawing board. And that's what we are trying, I try to do here. So, and that it goes really, after I pick it up, then it goes on beyond with other steps there. So this is one of the tools that I use.
Yeah, it's one of the many tools that you use, absolutely. But beautiful. I think the fact that you have taken it one step further, which I already kind of knew you were, last time we spoke, you were alluding to this new direction, and the fact that you literally have disrupted and impacted, it's still being designed for its traditional use, but then you've added that layer at the beginning so that then when it comes to you, the level of insight that you've created in consideration of that material, it's allowing for you to continue that story in a significantly more meaningful way. Like, to me, it's like storytelling 2.0. You've just done, like, I don't know, it is really fascinating. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Can I just say well done to any of our Aussie audience members, because like I'm nearly falling asleep.
Oh, dear.
So well done, guys. We're past my bedtime. Yeah, so tools of transformation. I find it really interesting. See, when you're in conversations with other makers, and I just find it fascinating how sort of the overlap of all that's being said. I think it's really beautiful. So for me, this piece here really speaks to what we were talking about earlier on in the nature of the ancestors and our heritage. So this piece it's called From the Same Cloth, and it's created from one piece of cloth, and at one side, so what you can see here is it's a pattern from the very first dress that I made for my daughter. Everything is cut from this one cloth. There is nothing left out from it. It's all from one. And at the other end of this is actually a vintage pattern that my mum's mum had made. So this is back many years ago. So I call her my mum's mum because I never met her. She would, if I'd met her, she would have been Nana Kate, but she died when my mum was a teenager. And it's really interesting because Melissa was talking there about, this when you don't appreciate sort of what you have when you're little, and the gifts of what comes through you, and it's just so beautiful that you're able to enjoy the fact that you sat with your mum as she sewed and stuff like that. So I never had that because my mum was purposefully not taught to sew, because her mum had been a milliner and a seamstress and had not wanted to pass on those skills because she was so often made use of. So this piece really speaks of, so that even in the way it's laid, it's the height of both myself and my mother in between these two dresses. It was laid to symbolize this nature of, no matter how we grow, how we develop in our experience, we continually carry this ancestral link, this ancestral thread through our genealogy. It's really interesting. I find it fascinating that you chose this piece, because it's quite exciting when you send people a whole bunch of images and you have no idea what they're going to choose. And what I really wanted to share in terms of my tools of transformation is time. It's the nature of time. And so the fact that that you brought up this image, because to me that, you know, this speaks literally of decades of time. And what I wanted to also speak to was this nature of connection. And, you know, it's coming in all of our works, you know, whether it's connecting to the land around us, connecting to the people, connecting to the cloth itself. It's this need to recognize our interbeing, the fact that we've set this situation in our current day where we're being very independent and I can do it myself and all this, and it's just not the way forward. You know, when we recognize this true connection between us, between nature, between each other, like that's when the shift can happen, is when we recognize that we are all completely interconnected. And I think bringing these makers together for me this evening, you know, and for yourself still afternoon, it's just a beautiful reminder of what it is to connect. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that, Jane. And I understand, I know it's getting a little bit late, and we're just going to open things up to a conversation. So if you do need to check out at any point in time, you know, I won't be insulted. I don't think our other panelists will be upset, but
I've still got cold tea. I'm all right.
Oh, okay, wonderful. So we're just going to open things up now. I'll pose the question, and I'm just going to open it up to you ladies. Okay, so you can just respond. How do you think we can improve the perception of creative reuse?
I think this is I have many different sides to me. I'm sure you all can relate to that. This is the purely business CEO marketing side of me coming out right now, who's going to say that no matter how wonderful and deeply moving your message is, it still needs to be attractive. So whatever that means, you know, we're all designers, right? We all want to make beautiful things. I think it's the message behind the beautiful things we make that makes it so much more powerful. So, I mean, we all have this advantage where we can put things on a silver platter and make people look beautiful and feel special with something that's been handmade and one of a kind. I think for me, it's always been about hooking people in, you know, like I've done like 250 trade shows in the 20 years I've been doing this, running adhesive clothing. And oftentimes when I'm sitting in my booth, you know, you'll see just like hundreds of people passing by you, and you're like, how do I wheel them into my booth? And I think it's, you know, you try clothing on, you style someone, and for face value, someone says, you know, oh, that's beautiful, that's attractive, I want to see that closer up. And then they say you're 50% closer to a sale just by getting the garment on the person. So, you know, my trick would be like, oh, it's so beautiful, it's all this and all that, and this color really suits you and all that. And then once it's on them, I would start to discuss to them the fact that, you know, the contrast fabric is made from a 1950s wool blanket, and these buttons are from the turn of the century, and oh, this is all hand stitched, you know, and this sort of thing. And then I think, you know, the message, you kind of like subtly kind of sneak in to them about the, you know, the fact that it is also good for the planet, it's sustainable, and you're doing, by supporting, you know, designers who upcycle and reuse and all of that, you're not just looking fabulous, you're also doing a world of contribution to what we're all trying to achieve here, which is quality over quantity, about all the things that go with that. So I think make it attractive, and then hook, line, and sinker, right? That's always been my approach anyways.
Can I just come into that? Because, you know, that's so true, Melissa. And I think, you know, I'm working with some emerging designers at the moment, and, you know, it's not enough to simply be reusing something that's on its way to landfill. You know, like that's a really lazy way of looking at something. Like, oh, I've done a good job because I've saved something from landfill. Because no, it's not a good job if it's just going to hang on your rack for the next however many years. You know, as a designer, we want to make beautiful things that make people feel fabulous in whatever form that is. And you know, as independent designers, you know, we're all working towards creating something for different people. So we want to have that uniqueness and that, and you know, as you're saying, Jose, this idea of the signature, you know, our own signature. And you know, that's really important. But it's recognizing that really good design is what's going to make a future in a sustainable fashion world. Because if it's all just looking like, you know, whatever, you know, nobody's going to want it unless it does make them feel good and it feels great to wear it. And it, you know, when your design came up there, Josie, I was just like, oh, yes, you know, I was like, immediately I was like, I could just see that on myself, you know. That is fantastic design, you know. And even Melissa, when I was looking through your feed, I was so excited as I was able to speak to you tonight. But I looked through it and I was like, that is some beautiful stuff, you know. And it's like that kind of thing. Sylvia, I saw Sylvia's stuff at Eco Fashion Week in 2018, it would have been, or 2019. Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal stuff. And I think that's in bringing together, you know, it's not a case of bringing together people who make stuff out of stuff that was going to landfill. It's about designers who are working in this really creative way, designing stuff that looks beautiful, you know, and it wants to be worn. And like you say, Melissa, you know, when it's on the body, that's it, it's there, it's on, you know, because you're wrapped in it, you want to have it. And yes, the story itself is wonderful, and hearing all of that, but no amount of that story is going to sell those clothes if they actually don't look very nice. And I think we really need to take responsibility for that. You know, it's really, really important. And
I just wanted to add one more quick thing just to highlight the quality over quantity aspect, because exactly like you said, Jane, you know, if it's beautiful, it you know, in my opinion, good design is not just about it being beautiful. It's about it lasting. It's about it being quality. It's about it being an heirloom piece, something that you can pass on to maybe your daughter and then her daughter in front of her. You know, that's the way things used to be made. And that is where my love affair with, a big part of my love affair with vintage comes from, is the quality, the practicality, and the usage. I mean, if it's beautiful and it's well made and it fits you well, that's an investment. And that's how people used to buy clothing back in the day, where they would get their one really good coat, you know, and they wore it every Sunday to church. And then, you know, and it's like, and it lasted forever. Literally, see pieces from the 40s and 50s that are in still better quality than things that I've acquired in the last 10 or 20 years. And I mean, there's something to be said for a quality made item that's beautiful and fits really well. That's, to me, that is conscious consumerism, and that's really good design to go with it, right?
I agree with all of you ladies. I think what you're saying is spot on. It says it all, because for a long time, sustainable fashion was green fashion was boring. Most people didn't want to wear it because it wasn't attractive. It wasn't stylish. It was just brown and ugly. Now everything has changed. We have amazing materials to work with that are organic or repurposed. And we don't have any excuse at all. Design is so important. Thinking sustainably through design and all the elements that you have to apply to it have never been more important than they are now. The story really matters, you know, like Melissa was saying, the story, and Jane was saying, the story is important, but the product itself has got to speak for itself. You need to stop them because the design is beautiful. And then, hang on a minute, it says so much more. I think this is a brilliant moment in time. And I'm hoping that this is going to be it for a long time. And it will be the normal. That's what we're hoping for. And yeah, well done. I love that. Fantastic.
I agree. If it's not beautiful, if it's not attractive, it doesn't pass the first test, for people. So first they're gonna be attracted. Oh, this is nice. Then they get there, they try it. Oh, and it's comfortable. It was not. Oh, and this is this material. Blah, 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 and then they get to know the story behind it, and then is when they realize that it has more than just nice. It has a story behind. It has a reason. It has a saving. It has all that. But if it doesn't have a design, if it's not beautiful, not attractive, they're not going to get it. First test, we have to make it beautiful. And it's true that at the beginning, eco fashion, or it was more like the hippie, the flower power thing, the t-shirt, the big thing. But I think it was another moment, at that time. That's what it was called for. Was the breaking, that starting point. So that it has improved, and now we know about more materials, not only cotton, but we have also a very large variety now of new materials coming up into the game. And then we have now more design. We have the zero waste pattern making. We have the upcycling. We have to make it all beautiful. So those were, the very first steps as a baby. I can see that on my items as well. The very first ones were like baby. Now there are much more work. So I think that's what happened also now with the eco fashion.
So I wonder for you all, how do you interpret creative reuse to foster community?
Okay, I think the key here is for me, the way I work with it is, I felt when the Rana Plaza incident happened that I could not just quietly work in my studio doing something about sustainable fashion. I had to be more visual and very vocal about it so that everybody else gets involved. It's not just the people who make the garments, it's the people who wear them as well. So that's where I felt that my creative reuse, I could take this into the community, the people that I'm directly in contact with, my children, where I do teach, where I am teaching in my workplace. So it just became something that I was never wanting to be a teacher, but now I'm teaching. I'm doing workshops online. I'm doing workshops in my studio. I am sharing the knowledge. I'm with you now. We're talking about these things. So I felt that was a way for me to kind of like use my creativity to make a positive change. And the only way to do that was go out and share it. What I do, why I am doing it. Why is it important? Why should everyone get involved? Because every man, woman, and child can make a difference to what is happening around the world. And this is the moment that we can do this now, because we can. Technology has allowed this. We have people in Australia, people in Germany, all of us here having this conversation, changing lives. So this is the moment.
I just wanted to mention, and totally 100% what Jose said as well, but to be honest, when I started Adhesive Clothing in 2003, there wasn't Instagram, and Facebook wasn't even really as big as it is now. I didn't know what to call it. I didn't call it upcycling. I just called it recycled fashion or what have you. And then since then, I am absolutely floored at what's going on. I'm like a bit of an Instagram whore, I have to say. I'm constantly on. I'm never anywhere else. I'm just constantly on Instagram. And I'm always looking up, all of the different hashtags for upcycling and slow fashion. It's just amazing. I cannot get over. I'm overwhelmed at the sheer volume of people who are do-it-yourself, repair, visible mending, all, it's not just the designers that are coming up with really, really sexy design and stuff, but just this whole mentality of darning your socks and, darning your favorite jeans, and this whole visible mending thing. It's amazing. There's a movement going on. I'm just excited. I'm just so excited about the conversation that's happening and how connected we all are and how much better connected we all are through social media. So much more has gone online. I guess it's sort of the perk to this whole, having to be stuck at home more often, or the whole pandemic thing is there's this ultra connectivity thing happening where you're no longer excused for saying you didn't know. Like, you can't say you don't know anymore. Like, it's everywhere. It's the only thing that I get worried about, and this is a side note, and I just want to briefly mention it, is the greenwashing aspect of all of the really big companies that are wanting to jump on the bandwagon because they see there is a voice. People they're demanding something new, something different, and progression to happen with the whole, reduce, reuse, recycle, repair thing that's going on right now. So, I mean, it shows you how powerful all of these voices are. It's not just us. There's a movement, and there's a big collective going on of voices, and I think inevitably those voices are going to be the change that we're all seeking, if we just keep making a big enough stink about it.
Thank you for that, Melissa. Any other comments?
I think that the new generations, the younger generations now are more conscious, and they are demanding, to have this responsibility of the companies making clothing now. And there are a lot of them now that they don't even buy new clothes. There's the younger ones, they're more going into the secondhand. It's cool. I don't know what applications you have there, but here, Wallapop or Vinted, or one of those is like they're all getting, their items there, and they say, oh, this thing is secondhand. I only wear secondhand, and I'm very happy. And I'm so happy when I hear young people, they are so conscious about it, and I think that's spreading more and more, and I think that's going to help. And showing, communicating, as Jose said at the beginning, with this change of conscious of the younger ones. I think it's more difficult for an older person, in the 50s and the 60s to use secondhand than a younger one, on their teens, in the high teens, where now it's cool, to wear that. But it's not only that it's cool, but they also know that about the planet, the climate. So I think is nice. We have to keep showing what we are doing, and why. The most important is, why are we doing it? Because I think there's now people that are listening. But I agree with Melissa, this greenwashing, but that is it has short legs, they might come up, but then how far can you get with not having the true thing behind your product or your service? So
yeah, I think the greenwashing, I personally feel that it might get worse before it gets better, because the companies that are doing this, while we're trying to change the mindset, because it is all about changing the mindset of the common, all of us. And if the companies that are doing this have got such a strong influence in these people that they have, that they're trying to get into their shops to buy or onto their site, it creates a kind of negative impact on those who are doing good with sustainability or circularity, because then you're almost fighting a battle. It's like it's a losing battle, because you have to fight those people who are using it just to sell their products and abusing it. And so people will stop believing that it is really important, that it really matters, that you're doing anything right. So if you talk about sustainability and you say, I'm a sustainable fashion designer, they'll think, oh, that's another one. So we have to fight even harder to get anyone to listen or want to know our stories or want to get involved with what we're doing. So I'm not sure whether we have to get the government involved or other people involved in this, because people have to then prove that they're actually really doing what they are doing, and not just using it as a smokescreen for them to do other things. It's a thing that's going around now, and I think it's a conversation I've had with so many other designers that I know, that it is a problem, and it's not going away very quickly, because now everyone knows you place the word sustainable on a product or what you're doing, and you get the attention. And like one of the ladies was saying, there's no depth to what they're saying. but they're still holding that gaze and keeping it for a while everybody else is trying to catch or get their attention. So that something has to happen, but I don't know what it is.
Thank you for that, Josie. Any comments over in Australia there? I know it's
yeah.
still awake?
I think it's yes, absolutely. No, it's really interesting that we're having this conversation, the nature of greenwashing, because I completely agree, Josie. I think that it is going to get worse before it gets better. I think that there is in a sense a bandwagon that that large companies need to jump on because they realize that this is something that's important. But I also feel, maybe we're just an eternal optimist, but I do feel that particularly the younger generation are requiring the truth, requiring answers, and they will call you out. I live with a 14-year-old, so I know I don't get away with anything. And, I think that really, really excites me because it's almost a state of rebellion by wanting companies to do the right thing. That's become the thing that they want. And I just think that that's really, really exciting. And then also, to speak to what you're saying, Sylvia, about this, the sort of the secondhand the aspect of, teenagers. My teen is totally into Depop and sells through Depop things that are no longer, that no longer fit or whatever, and buys from that. And that for me is also a very exciting thing because, okay, so if you have something that is not able to be resold because it's flimsy, it falls apart, it's not, it's not made well, then there is part of that cycle that makes you go, I want to buy something that is well made because it retains its life for longer. And so that value is already inherent because you're like, well, so that really excites me that for me, teenagers are the ones that really are calling the shots right now. And I think that's really exciting.
Well, I know that we're getting close to end here, but I do have a couple of questions. I really want to get some answers out of you before we get to an end here. So what is the biggest challenge in working with creative reuse? Is it the resources, funding, like technical application? Can you kind of point to something in each of your practices that you found the biggest challenge?
I guess there's so much I could say about this actually, but when I first started, I knew that I wanted to make one. I've always wanted to retain a one of a kind element to my work. But I also knew that in order to appeal to the mainstream or to get, to market, there needed to be multiples. I mean, I had to have sizes. I mean, to really make money, so to speak, or to wholesale or all the rest of that. Like, I was like, how do I do that if every single thing is completely one of a kind? So I think when you're doing things that way, you already start thinking creatively, like, okay, I want to keep things one of a kind. I want them to have a story, want them to be unique. So, the resources, I think, attached to doing things that way, doing things sort of from left field and one of a kind and not mass produced and thoughtfully made and what have you, the resources behind that are almost, I mean, I would say at least double, like, in terms of hiring people to, help you cut out one of a kind pieces and the training that goes behind that. And this, even just with, if you need, more sewers to help you or whatever, all of the amount of time and effort and energy that goes into producing things in a very thoughtful way, I think is magnanimously higher than hiring a factory or something to do the work for you. So that in itself is something that should be educated to people, I think, when they question your price point or what have you, all the rest of that. It's like, it's not just me, myself, and I and my design ideas and what have you. It's the resources that go into actually pulling it off, right? And being able to feed yourself and fund your business and stuff and pay your people should you have help is a big equation I'm constantly trying to like refine and figure out through all of the different chapters of my business, I think.
Yeah, I want to say that I agree with Melissa, and also people think that because it was trash or it was secondhand or it was upcycling, that it should be lower price, when it actually has a lot. You have to spend a little bit more resources, as Melissa just explained. You need to cut, you need to design, something that is already made. If I have a piece of material that is 10 meters long, then I can, do it. But I have something that is very specific, or a piece of clothing that is already made, and that needs to be undone and then redone in a totally different way and creative. So also I think that a lot of the things that we do are pieces of art, it's a lot of work involved. And I think that sometimes that is not known or recognized, all the work that is behind what we do. For example, in my coffee bags, it's a coffee bag that it was to be thrown away, but then it has been recupped, it has been cleaned, it has been shaved. Then I have these, a coffee bag is about 60, 70 centimeters wide, and it has 90 centimeters long. So it's very limited. And with that, you have to make all different kind of things. So the creativity that goes behind and the art, that we have to put with all together, it has to be transmitted. And I don't think that we need more communication, I think, on that, And also the idea of people wearing something that it was either coming from secondhand or it been upcycled and stuff. Also, the teens, I think they have been adopted that quite well, but going into wider market then still needs to be worked a little bit more. And then the funding, I think that being as SMEs, then I think we require that support more than the bigger companies. They have a lot of resources. Yeah. So, and sometimes those are not really those helps are not really getting to the micro enterprises.
I agree with Melissa and Sylvia. I think it is a really tricky one when it comes to the amount of work that goes into what we do and the length of time spent trying to perfect the cloth before you work with it and apply all the techniques. It's very lengthy, and that means pricing it will increase. And so when you sell this product, people sometimes don't understand, or it's just a dress, but this dress has traveled how many thousands of miles, Sylvia, to get here. And so what do you do with it when you are, trying to give it that extra kind of excitement so that people will want to buy it and own it, keep it for a very long time? So yes, funding is also another issue as well. Being able to explore different techniques and different ideas that you can apply to the things that we're doing requires time to research, time to experiment, and so all these things need money. And the funds sometimes go to the big companies because they know how to apply for this funding, and we small organizations don't get the look in at all. Yeah, funding definitely, and time spent perfecting and creating. I think we definitely share that. I share that with you.
I think that it's that sort of practical question that these sorts of conversations always end up with is the nature of, are we actually a sustainable business? Can we actually sustain our own practice? And for me personally, if it wasn't for being able to work as an educator, then no, it wouldn't be sustainable. I think that it's that it's about having that multifaceted approach to how you have your business. So what other elements are in there? Just as a sort of optimistic, positive note. Today in the Indian Ocean Craft Triennial, I was at the conference today, and there was a young Indian man who left the banking profession to work with a woman who it's all to do with regenerative farming and looking at wool production in these regions. And he was sort of asked the question like, well, why would you leave banking? And his response was, well, because this is the way of the future. And I was like, wow, you know, like, yes, because the whole thing, you know, if you look at COVID, right, you know, this horrendous thing that's happened globally, right? But boy, were we able to change our structures. Look at the systems that we just completely collapsed, right? In a way that nobody could have foreseen. Well, that's what we need to do in the fashion system. It's not a person. We're not going to hurt people's feelings by saying, I'm sorry, fashion doesn't work like this anymore. For me, it's about creating a system where we don't need the terminology of sustainable fashion, because it is just fashion, but we've designed it to work for the makers, work for the people who are employed in this system. Like it's a case of not diluting the strength and the uniqueness, that individual designers can offer by making it mass produced. And you can only mass produce if you are diluting, if you're really just taking away all the great stuff. So why not just flip that on its head, and it becomes about these collectives where there are multiple individual designers. You know, I think to me that's where our strength can come, you know, rather than individual designers where there is no connection between us. It's individual designers having their own unique signature, but working collectively so that we can support each other. So I think we need to do it.
And this is why I chose all of you to join the conversation today, because you all are empowering in your collective communities. And so if you could change one aspect of society through the act of creative reuse, what would that be? Would it be a superpower of some sort? Like, just throw something at me that's just plain old fun.
Oh my God, if we could all just be like zap new button or something, that would be pretty cool. Zap new sleeve.
I think they're kind of doing that with digital fashion, are they not? But that's kind of
like, do you have to be like a digital person to wear it, or can you be a real person?
I think for me it would be mindset. You know, just flip that switch and get those minds to think differently, and across the board, from the young person to that grandmother, grandfather somewhere, just to think differently and take on this whole new way of looking and thinking about the consciousness that needs to happen. Flip the mindset.
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
I think it would be really cool if all of us on the planet at one specific moment could all just be like 5 again, and then just be given a bunch of scrap fabrics and glue sticks and just make some stuff and play and not waste anything, and figure out what kind of amazing things we can all do with stuff lying around.
I like that idea.
I'm around 3-year-olds most of the time lately, and it's actually just totally amazing how they get it, you know, like when you tell them not to waste and what can we do with this, and let's make something fun. And, you know, if you make it fun, then people want to do it too, right? So I think, again, it's the whole attraction thing. This is like lure them in with attraction and fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then show them the responsibility behind it, right?
Yeah.
The way we consume and the way we produce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, instead of having only a few producers making millions of garments, making millions of producers, you know, small producers making, you know, a smaller amount of garments each one. And the way we consume, you know, all these different new business models that we're coming together now that they're showing up. I think that would be nice to see them flourish and growing, and so we can decouple the use of prime material, new material, you know, and the usage.
So I was just saying, I think there should be a law where you're just not allowed to wear the same thing as anybody else, right? Like, it's just a law, right? Because like when I used to go to parties, I would always ask, like, what are you wearing? And now the reason I would ask that question is to make absolutely sure that when I arrived, I was not wearing anything like anybody else. But actually, what a lot of people do when they ask that question, it's to make sure that they're kind of like in line with the other. Yeah, but whereas I'm like, no, it should be like, and then that way, designers like us that are creating these pieces that like nobody else is going to have, like we're just like up there. So that's what I think. I think we should be a law. You are not allowed to wear anything that anybody else is wearing.
I'm with you, Jane. I'm with you, Jane. I think that would be amazing, because that's the one reason why I started making garments for myself, because I thought, I'm not turning up there and looking like everybody else. So every party I am going to be, and then I can rewear them and not apologize because it's mine. Nobody else is wearing it.
I like this idea of a one of a kind.
Yeah,
I like that idea, one of a kind, because actually that's what we do, one of a kind, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think we're getting to a close now. I know that we've gone on for 2 hours, and I feel like we are just beginning the conversation, to be honest with you. And I know I prepared a plethora of other questions, but I think that this is to be continued. I mean, I'm really glad that I was able to bring you all together today and in this way. And I hope that these conversations and these friendships can continue to blossom. You know, one thing that I would like to say, my wish list is to see all 4 of your work together in some capacity, in some way, whether that's an exhibition, a showcase, just because you do all do things very differently. And that's the point. And it kind of ties into what you just formulated, Jane, was there's something about that law that each of you are already practicing in your work, but it just to be able to further delineate that in a way so that it really gets filtered into the mindset. Like you identified, Jose, changing that mindset. And yeah, there's just so much. You've given me a ton of food for thought, and you're inspiring me as much as anything. So it's been really lovely to be able to spend this time with you and just listen to you. But yeah, I know that I've gotten a few different things that kind of popped up. I'm just kind of filtering through. One person asked about what your thoughts are on the little black dress.
Yeah, I love that little black dress. I think it should be, you know, a basic black dress in every, because it's always there and it never goes. It's a, how you call it, a basic item, no, in your wardrobe.
Yeah, it's a staple. I think that's a key part. If we had designers designing little black dresses, so for example, we're all very different. Your little black dress, Melissa, will be different from mine. Your Sylvia will be different from mine. And I think that's the only way we can get people excited about the little black dress that you produce or I produce. And there's a place for it. I think it's stood the test of time. It's definitely a must-have, but done the right way, one that you can keep for a very long time, then it makes so much sense.
Yeah, I make the little back dress.
You do?
You know, the back dress, yes.
Fabulous.
You know, for time's sake right now, because I know that it's quite late for you, Jane, that I'm going to bring it to a close. I just want to say thank you so much. I'm actually what I might do is some of the other questions that I have is I'm going to post them on social media so that we can continue the conversation.
Oh,
I think it's a better way of doing that rather than eating up the rest of your time today. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to be part of the conversation today. And I just want to give a shout out to everyone at Sustainable Fashion Week UK for allowing us to participate in their programming for 2021. And obviously I want to say thank you to all the guests that were able to kind of tune in. A lot of people kind of popped in and out. I just want to also acknowledge that, you know, this will get released as an episode on my podcast, The Material Revolution. So you can get that obviously through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google, so that you can share this with your friends, those that you couldn't connect today. And I know there's a lot of people that wanted to, but it's just the time difference for some people is just killer. Again, thank you so very much, everybody, and have a wonderful evening. Wonderful. Thanks so much.
That was so lovely to see everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure meeting you all. Thank you and sharing. Thanks.
Thank you.